Howdy, folks. Welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Michael. We've got another great episode for you today. Today, we're actually connecting with someone that, ironically, I had actually met in person before he came on the podcast, but I didn't know that he'd actually signed up. So I want to introduce you guys to Matt Lewis. He is a hunter, an outdoorsman. He's a resident of Colorado. I've had some beers with him. He's a good guy, and he has some great stories for us today. So, to my listeners, if you guys have some great stories, be like Matt. I've got a form. You can find it on the show notes. You can find it on my Instagram. Just go on there and just fill it out, and then we will get in touch with you to schedule some time to hear your stories. But other than that, make sure you review and you're liking the podcast. And now let's kick this thing off and let Matt tell you some of his stories. Thank you. All right, Matt. Welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing well too, man. It's great to have you here, man. It's funny that you're here. You told me why. I had no idea. But you went onto my online little thing and said, hey, I'd like to tell some stories. And we reached out to you. And then you're like, oh, dude, we met. We were at a BHA Pint Night. And I was like, what? Oh, yeah. Okay. No, you looked familiar. And so I'm sorry for not knowing that ahead of time. I'm going to blame my buddy Jared, who I now have scheduling these things. It's on him, right? Okay. Not my fault. But let's do this, man. Let's kick this thing off with a little introduction of yourself, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. My name's Matt. I live out here in Colorado. Came out here from Washington State. I grew up in a pretty rural area on the West Coast, right on the bay. So kind of being in the middle of nowhere outdoors it's what you do for fun.
Yeah. Right.
There's not much, shopping or, it's kind of a food desert. If you want to burn some time, you went out in the woods or you went and got on a boat, did some fishing, that sort of stuff. So
yeah, and Washington has some great forests, man. Some phenomenal, both on the western side and the eastern side. It's a beautiful country.
Yeah, I definitely miss it sometimes. Just like moss over there covers everything.
Yeah.
It's like when you go walking through the woods, it's like a carpet, pretty much.
Yeah.
Versus you have a dry fall out here. Every step sounds like you're stepping on like firecrackers.
Yeah, right. I can't think of how many times I've set up somewhere and I spend the first 5 minutes setting up, just moving dead, dry brush out from underneath me, so I could just turn without making noise. So it's definitely different, Washington to Colorado, but both beautiful and both wonderful in their own ways, right?
Yeah. Anyway, so kind of with my upbringing, as a kid, I didn't do a ton of, hunting big game. We did some duck hunting, some grouse hunting, out in the woods. But the main thing we did as a family is we went out in the ocean and did some fishing. So I grew up right on Willapa Bay. So if you go, look at a map of Washington, you're going to see this kind of big, mudflat bay, and it's got a finger that comes up on the west side, and so we were kind of nestled in there. And salmon, all sorts of stuff in the bay, and then we'd run over the Willapa Bay bar and do a lot of ocean fishing.
Very cool, man.
Yeah. So out there, it's kind of salmon, halibut, lingcod, rockfish. We went out a couple times for tuna. You can get albacore up that far north.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, you have to have a warm enough summer for them to come in, 50, 60 miles or so.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so we had a big old chest game freezer, but we weren't filling it with elk at that time. It was salmon and whatnot.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't know if you know this, Matt, but I lived in Washington for 4.5 years in the Seattle area, man. But I loved it. It rains a lot. It is gloomy, and that's why we ended up leaving, because we needed some more sunshine in our lives.
Same here.
But man, we went crabbing all the time, and shrimping. We went twice. And the first time, man, we failed so hard at shrimping the first time. That, I spent hours just researching what we did wrong, and we figured it out. And then the next time we went, we limited it out to the point that we were like grabbing children and pulling them on the boat and then buying them licenses while we were out on the water pulling our pots up so that we made sure to stay legal. So it was just so much fun. We took all of these shrimp back to our VRBO because it wasn't anywhere near where we stayed or we lived, so we had to rent this place. And every person picked a different dish, and we just made shrimp like 12 different ways. It was like, it's one of the highlights of like my life, that shrimping up there in Washington. It's so fun.
Yeah, yeah, and those spot prawns are amazing tasting.
God, so good. Although I never realized how viciously sharp they are. I was so sliced up.
Oh yeah,
processing 500 of them. So
yeah.
All right, sorry, I interrupted though, but yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no worries, no worries. No, I love talking about hunting. But I'll talk your ear off about fishing too.
Yeah.
So segue. My first story is actually a fishing story, if that's all right.
Perfectly fine by me.
All right. So one thing my family would do, we'd occasionally take kind of like a fishing boat camping
Okay.
sort of vacation. We'd just kind of take the boat up, and we'd be sleeping on the boat at night, and we just kind of fish here and there throughout the day. Mostly catching something for dinner. We did that out out in the like Orcas Island area. That was a pretty good trip. And the one after that, we went up into the west coast of Canada, and so we were kind of boating around through that area, catching. Much the same. Up there, you can catch yellow eye rockfish.
Yeah.
Those vibrant red, crazy golden eyeballs. Taste excellent, by the way. Best fish tacos ever. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so one night we're kind of getting towards this inlet. We're gonna camp for the night. And my dad's looking down at the fish finder. He finds a pretty good like rocky structure down there. And there, do you know when you look at a fish finder and you kind of see the it's like little arch shapes all over it?
I'll be honest, man. I have a couple fishing stories, but I by no means am a fisherman. I need to learn a lot more. So no, I don't. But I'm sure some of the listeners are like, "Oh yeah, I know what Matt's talking about."
All right, no worries. Yeah, so when a fish shows up on your sonar, it looks like a little arch.
Okay.
Kind of like a little eyebrow or something, right? So this rock's coated in those things. So we pull out the gear, and we're kind of thinking we're going to catch, a few rockfish, make some fish tacos, and that's going to be a good culinary evening, right? Hard to beat fresh fish. So we get set up, and we've got our bass gear, and we drop down and we start jigging. Okay. And we're jigging along, and I go to pull up, and I just feel it stop. And my first thought is, oh man, I've snagged this.
Yeah.
I'm never going to hear the end of it from my dad, because he handed me that rod and said, hey, this is my last one of this lure. You can't lose it, And so I'm just sitting there going, oh no. So
people say that like whenever someone goes, this is my last one of these lures, they're saying that because they know eventually it will get lost, and that way they can blame someone else. That's just the way it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I pull up, reel down, and what I'm trying to do is either pop this thing off of whatever it's snagged on,
okay,
or break it off and go get a new lure so I can get back to fishing. So I pull up and reel down on it, and I keep getting some slack. And so at that point I'm kind of thinking, maybe I've snagged something bigger, I'm picking it up, and at that point I kind of yell at my dad who's at the wheel. I'm up on the bow, hey, I think I'm pulling up a big pile of kelp or something.
Yeah.
And he looks at the sonar and goes, you got something on there. It looked like a pretty big blob. We're in about, I don't know, 50 feet of water or so.
Okay.
So, I've got this thing about a third of the way up at that point, right? So I keep doing this, and I get to about 2/3, 3/4 of the way up, and whatever I'm snagged on takes off, and it's just ripping line out of the reel.
No,
Yeah, and I'm sitting there kind of in shock, right? I'm expecting like,
yeah,
5, 10 pound rockfish. I'm on super light tackle. There's no way one of those things is supposed to be taking line like that. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's just like one behemoth of a lingcod, right? They like hanging out around rocks. So so I end up fighting this fish for quite a while. I didn't, I kept the drag pretty light. It was on light gear, right? So I knew whatever I had was big enough that if I really dialed on the drag, it was going to snap off. And
okay.
I wanted to see what this thing is. I feel like that's half the
Yeah,
joy of fishing is
yeah,
figuring out what on earth you got, right? So, a while later, we get this thing to the surface, and it's a decently sized halibut. Like the biggest one I'd caught, weight wise, over 50 pounds. I don't think it was over the 70-pound mark, but we didn't have a scale, but I mean, it was a pretty big halibut.
yeah,
We're used to catching, like 30, 40-pound ones
yeah.
over in Washington, right?
That's
Um,
amazing. Did you actually get him up in the boat?
well,
Oh,
eventually, yeah.
okay.
So, so we get this halibut to the surface, and Dad grabs the fish gaff, big old hook on a pole, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Punch it through the thing, and we pull it up on the bow of the boat. And then we just start whaling on this thing with fish clubs. It was kind of, yeah. So,
Both of
those
you, or are
big,
you like taking turns?
both,
Or?
both of us, we had 2 clubs on board and
Okay.
just got after it. Yeah. So those bigger fish can break stuff on a boat, because they get up there and they start freaking out, flopping,
Yeah.
you know. So we're beating it, trying to get it killed. It's got a hole through its head from the gaff, and
It's putting up a fight.
by the time we've gotten done whacking it, it's got like an eyeball hanging out. I mean, this thing is done, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I skipped a step. We had threaded a rope through the gill plate and through
Okay.
the mouth so it can't slide off the side of the boat as we're dispatching of it, right?
Yeah.
So now that rope was tied to one of the bow railings, and so it kind of had to do a transfer. Okay, so grab the fish, pull the rope out. Second the rope leaves the thing's mouth, it comes to life and starts flopping like crazy. I mean, you wouldn't
This is
have believed.
After you've clubbed it 100 times?
Yeah, after we've clubbed it, it's got an eyeball hanging out. It's got a hole through its head, and it's flopping all over. And it, flops. I think I was the one kind of dropped it first, right? So flops out of my hand, and then my dad kind of tries to kind of tackle it, but slides out from under him. Then I try the same thing, slides out from under me. They're super slick fish,
Yeah.
like a snot sort of membrane on the whole thing, right? But yeah, and then it slides right off the boat into the water.
No
Just
way.
Yeah, right into the water, and we were heartbroken,
Yeah.
and just huge bummer for both of us, right? And I mean, just something like that. I mean, just the disappointment is just seared into your mind. You're like, man,
God, I can't even imagine. How long
such a
did you
great
fight that
fish.
fish on the light tackle?
Probably about 35, 40 minutes.
Okay, that's not too bad, but still,
Yeah,
that's
it wasn't,
disappointing.
I mean, if you hear about someone who's tied into a big marlin or something,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a different class of fighting for sure. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, we kind of collect ourselves, and there's more of the story. So we get
Open.
thinking, maybe there's more halibut down there. We don't really know why there would be, right? They usually hang out on like muddy bottoms where they can kind of shimmy under the sand and whatnot, and catch fish as they go swimming over them. But
Yeah.
we got thinking, okay, if there's one, maybe there's a few more. So we drop, gear back down, start jigging again. And the swell's starting to pick up a little bit. And my dad's kind of watching the swell, and he sees something kind of sitting up on top of one of the swells. And he asks me to go, looking over there. Goes, hey, I think a seal might have your fish or something, right? Yeah. So I'm like staring at this spot, and the wave turns just right, and it doesn't look like a seal. It looks like there's a big pancake on the side of this wave, and I go, I think that might be the fish. So we drive over to it to check it out, and sure enough, this halibut is just sitting on the surface. It's, I don't know, maybe so messed up it didn't
Yeah.
dive right, or right. But yeah, so we found it again. We're able to rehook the sucker and get it back on the boat. And this time we brought it into the back of the boat where there's gunnels and it couldn't escape.
Yeah.
So
That's amazing,
yeah,
man.
we had halibut tacos, rockfish.
That's an amazing story. I like the fight and then the retrieval and all that, man. It's funny. I hear a lot of guys, especially with like duck hunting, like duck hunting stories are just duck hunting stories. It's kind of like fishing stories is what they compare it to. But that's a good fishing story, man.
Yeah, no. I mean, after it happened, my dad looked at me and said, you'd be hard pressed to ever come across a better fishing story that, you've experienced.
Yeah.
And yeah, I haven't beat it.
No,
Yeah.
I can't imagine like losing. Like first off, catching a fish you're not supposed to catch. Online, you're not supposed to catch it with. Getting it in the
Yeah.
boat, beating the hell out of it, and then it still gets away. Like just getting to that point is crazy.
Yeah.
But then,
That alone.
then finding
great
him
story.
just floating away. Yeah. Sounds like you gave him enough bit of a beating. So that's a good story, Matt. Thank you for sharing, man. Unless there's anything more to it. I don't want to cut you off if all of a sudden his buddy
No,
shows
it didn't
up.
get away again. So
Okay. All right, cool. Well, what else you got for us, man? That's a good
Yeah.
start. And again, I think it's only like the second or third fishing story ever told in the podcast. So I appreciate it.
All right. Yeah. So about 10 years ago or so, I moved out to Colorado, go to college, and kind of during that time, I was pretty busy. I was doing engineering school at Colorado School of Mines, wrestling, and working as a tutor. So I
Okay.
didn't have a whole lot of time for outdoor recreating.
Yeah.
One thing I wish I did during that time was pick up big game preference points. Didn't realize you
Oh,
could do that
no.
as a college student.
Yeah.
So,
I'm with you, man. I when I started hunting, I was in Washington. So I was
mhm.
born in Colorado, right? I've lived here most of my life, and I have accumulated 4 points, spent them, and now I have 1 point. It's like I should have so many points, being that I've been here my whole life, but nope. Just
Yeah.
no. Oh well, we live and learn.
Yep, it happens. Yeah, anyway, so after college, just to kind of fill some time, I started trying to learn about, big game hunting and getting into that. I'd done some small game hunting growing up. We had a duck dog, so
Okay.
we did quite a bit of duck hunting in the area and some grouse hunting. But I kind of wanted to get into big game before my parents moved out to Washington. My dad had done quite a bit of big game hunting in Idaho where they lived.
Why'd he stop
Um,
when he went to Washington? I mean, it's not like a trophy state by any means, like not known as the best ever, but there's plenty of elk there. In fact, I killed my first elk in Washington.
yeah, I think he was kind of mainly he was just kind of following the I guess the food resource he was most interested in,
Okay.
which is
Yeah.
seafood.
Yeah. No, that's a good answer. You only have so many hours in a day, right? And so many days in a year. If you're going to do it all fishing, especially if you're on the coast, right? That or Rosie's.
Right,
Yeah. Okay.
right.
Sorry. Plenty of questions.
Oh,
Keep
no
going.
worries. anyway, so yeah, I got into big game hunting after college. Kind of totally caught the bug. Um, definitely, uh, definitely a steep learning curve. Big game. It
Yeah.
seems, like every species you look at and go, I think that might be tasty. Uh, you got to learn a bit of biology. You got to learn patterns. When's their breeding season? I mean, you name it. It's a really fun puzzle.
Yep.
So as an engineer, I do like puzzles. So just the whole hunt planning process, I get a pretty good kick out of that. Um, all right, so stories. Let's see here. Um, so yeah, so let's see. This would have been so my introduction to big game was antelope hunting. Uh,
Okay.
a guy at church I was going to at the time, I'd been talking to him about learning. He's like, "Hey, you should, come out. You can pick up a couple doe tags on the leftover list, and I can kind of show you the ropes of antelope, which is I really like antelope hunting uh, from the standpoint of you get to see a ton of animals and you
Yes.
get to try to stock up on them a lot, but
Yes. That's
you know,
accurate. Are you
I,
rifle or bow hunting for these guys?
rifle.
Okay. Phew. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, even with the rifle, I mean, you'd think that it's, I'm sure you end up stocking a lot less with the rifle because you don't have to get nearly as close, but those things see so good. I
So
mean, you,
good.
I mean, you'll be like 500 yards away, you know, crawling, and one will pop its head up, and the whole herd moves.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
I don't know if you listened to my episode about my season of antelope hunting, but I got one with my bow this year. It was just
Oh,
so
congrats!
so frustrating, man. Yeah, I don't know if you can see him over there, but I'll show him to you later. But yeah, it was just crawling. I ended up just not hunting antelope, but hunting an opportunity. So I was looking for ones that had made a mistake. Because like you see them, you're like, oh, that one already sees me. There's no point in getting out of the car. Like, let's keep moving. We'll find another antelope down the road. And
Hmm.
we ended up at first we went, oh, antelope, get out. And an hour later, we're like, we never had a chance. That guy saw us the whole time. Just got to learn which opportunities to take. And eventually, I found one that I think had been in a fight and was exhausted and made a mistake. Then I got lucky, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah, yeah, um, yeah, yeah. They're crazy critters.
They
Anyway,
really are.
yeah. So yeah, antelope was kind of my introduction. I'm gonna fast forward really quick. So a couple years later, I'm still, hunting kind of the same tag. Um, and so me and a buddy, we get up nice and early, and we're kind of hunting off our feet. It's, just a chunk of private farmland, just one of those blocks out there.
Okay.
Um,
That you like
so
asked for permission to get onto, or is it one of those that like gives its space to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife?
yeah, no, yeah, I had permission through the guy I knew through church, so
Okay. Cool. Very cool.
yeah. But anyway, so we get kind of walking along a fence line, kind of at the bottom of the property, sun at our backs, which I found to be a pretty good technique on antelopes right around first light, because they know you're not a fence post, but they're not quite sure what you are, so they get a little curious.
Yeah.
And so, like if you think about a triangle and you're kind of walking along, the one of the edges of it, they'll kind of angle themselves to where they, if you both kept walking, you'd kind of meet at a corner.
Yeah.
Um, so just kind of doing that, eventually you get to the point where you're like, oh yeah, we're within a couple hundred yards. Then you just pop down with your pack. Anyway, so we're doing that. And then there's this pretty good group of like 8 or 9, plenty of does and a buck. I've got a we both have doe tags. So we're walking along and we hit about 300 or so yards, and I start noticing the hairs, on the flanks of a couple of the does starting to stand up. So I tell my buddy, like, hey, I think they're starting to get spooked. I don't know how much closer they're gonna get. How are you feeling about this? It was his first time hunting antelope, so I kind of wanted him to get a shot first.
Yeah.
And he looked at it and said, man, I'm a little more comfortable around, 150 yards. Go for it. And I said, okay. So
What
picked
distance are you
out,
at? I'm sorry if you already mentioned it, but
we're at about 300 or so.
okay, cool.
So I get set up, pack laid out, and we're kind of on a bit of a knoll shooting down at them. So get one picked out that's just kind of standing there, your perfect stereotypical broadside shot. I take my shot. I get the good, that thump sound you'll get.
Yeah.
Yeah. So get the thump sound. She takes a couple steps, lays down. And I'm like, okay, great, perfect. We'll be cleaning antelope in 15, 20 minutes, right? And the rest of the does, they were obviously spooked by the shot. Now the buck, he was fired up that day. So the does are trying to get away, and he's running around them, just herding them back over to where that other doe's laying down.
Huh.
He's not at all spooked by the shot, and he's shoving them around, poking them with his horns and just putting on a real show.
That's
And
cool. I've never seen that.
yeah, it was awesome to watch. You're just sitting there with our binoculars, and then he comes up to the doe I'd just downed, and she had her head up, and he took his horns kind of under her midsection and shoved her back up to her feet.
Okay, so she wasn't dead. She was just laying down.
Yeah, she was just laying down. The shot went through both lungs.
Okay.
So it's kind of a back lung shot.
Gotcha.
A little farther forward's better for sure. But
Okay.
Anyway, so he knocks her up to her feet, and then he proceeds to mount her. And
What?
yeah, he mounts her, and we're just kind of sitting there in shock. I've got another bullet in the chamber going, okay, maybe I should put another one in her. I'm not liking watching this.
Yeah.
But yeah,
what a terrible way to go.
Yeah, it was. And we're just both sitting there, just like, swearing, calling this buck all sorts of, names. It's just like, dude, leave her alone. And so yeah, we're just sitting there, basically waiting for him to, get off of her, and we're debating, like, should we, shoot one around them, try to spook her off her, and and he was just persistent as can be, but eventually gave her some space, and she gave me just this beautiful quartering away shot. So, and then that spooked the rest of the herd.
Goodness gracious. I was worried that exactly what happened was going to happen, as you said he lifted her up, and I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
Animal Kingdom.
Yeah, well, and at the time, I didn't know they would do that sort of thing. I'd never not had antelope just run away, after a shot's fired.
Yeah.
Normally they're so skittish, but he just, he had other things on his mind.
Right. Yeah, it's funny thing about antelope, they seem to know exactly what weapon you're using, and they hang out at that range where they feel safe. Like you said, you couldn't get in within 500 yards on most of them. What's funny is when I was bow hunting, it was like 95 yards. Like they were right at that 100-yard mark, and they just wouldn't let me any closer. So they're interesting critters, man. But I've always wanted to see the rut. Of course, archery season's like really, really early, August compared to the rut, which is what, November sometime, late October. So I've never really seen any of that rut activity. I've even brought decoys out. No interest whatsoever. So it's a very different game. So it's cool that you got to see him acting that way. He took a little too far, a little inappropriate, but as a whole, man, it's a great story.
Yeah, just unbelievable. Yeah, quick one on the rut stuff. that first year I was out there, I had a couple bucks. I got to watch them kind of fight and battle with each other,
Yeah.
and I just popped down. I had doe tags, so I wasn't gonna do anything, but I was just watching with the binoculars, and man, that was just an awesome experience. And they
I
were
bet.
going. I mean, it was hard. It was fast paced. I mean, you see like deer lock up and shove each other. They were like popping their heads back, knocking them together and spinning circles. I mean, dust was going everywhere.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was. I highly recommend hunting the red if you ever get a chance.
I might.
It's cool.
I am currently feel burned out because it was so hard archery hunting them, and like so many opportunities were just blown for stupid reasons, and it's just such a difficult thing but I'll tell you what, as soon as I'm putting for tags, I'm probably gonna be fired up about it again. But just because it's so recent, I'm like, I don't want to do that again. That sucked. But yeah, I would love to actually hunt one during the rut. I'm saving up points in Wyoming, so I'm hoping to go up there, and I'll probably end up doing rifle whenever that tag does get drawn.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what else you got, Matt? You've had two good ones so far.
Yeah. So, one critter I've been, I haven't gotten a tag filled yet on this one, but turkeys. Turkeys are like a fun little springtime puzzle.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I've been hunting, the mountain murrens we have here, and it is a way, way different bird than what you see in the city. I mean, in the city, they're, dumb as can be. We had some at work. Let's see, this was, in the fall, and there was a Jake there standing at one of the windows at work, just ruffling up, getting all worked up over his own reflection. But man, yeah, you go into the woods and it's a totally different bird. They turn into these little, ninjas.
Yeah.
You'll see them once and then they're just gone.
Just see the tail feathers, right? Just running away.
But yeah, anyway, so I've been pursuing turkey for probably about 5 years, and my second season is the closest I've gotten to taking one. I've got this spot up in the mountains on public lands. I'm not going to disclose that because not a lot of people know about it for whatever reason. It's weird. I've run into one other hunter in 5 years there, which that is
You see
bizarre.
birds every time?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
You're getting into
Or at
birds every
least
time.
hear them.
Yeah.
And they stay talking through May too. I had hunted this area that had like really, really high pressure, and after about week 2, they stopped gobbling.
Yeah.
They had kind of figured out that wasn't in their best interest.
Yep.
But yeah, so I went up to this area, packed in, and kind of camped for the night, and so I was going to spend the evening kind of mostly trying to locate some birds, figure out, what general part of trees they're going to be roosting in, and then, idea being in the morning, I kind of set up near that.
Okay.
Hopefully get one pretty soon after they fly down. So I get up on this ridge and I just set up and started calling and just hanging out, and at that point I didn't know if my calling, I use a pot call, I didn't know if it was any good at all. I just kind of been watching YouTube mimicking that, right?
Yeah, same. That's how I learned it as well.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there calling, and I'm getting no response. I'm kind of in my head going, oh man, maybe maybe they haven't gotten up high enough yet. And then on the other side of this little clearing, this gobble just explodes out of the bushes. I was like, okay, they're coming in quiet. Game on. I might fill my tag tonight.
Yeah.
Right. So I keep calling, and the hens that are with this Tom, they start talking with me. I'm kind of having a turkey conversation with them.
Yeah.
I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, and so they get working around the clearing, and they're moving around, and then I start hearing them like right behind me, like 10 feet behind me. I've got my back up against this tree, just,
Of course.
and, you know, and then I heard some kind of rustling to my left, some bushes to my left, and I'm like thinking, all right, here we go, And I kind of like move my eyeballs to the side to kind of side eye, see him coming in, right? And it's just this hen's head sticking out of a bush, staring directly at me.
Okay.
So she had gone in first, the tom's back, presumably near her, but so she gets a good look at me and then goes skittering off. I don't hear it again from them the whole evening. So I decide, okay, I'm gonna leave them alone. I know roughly what way they headed to. I know there's some really good roosting trees there, so I'm just gonna be back, in the area in the morning, and hopefully it goes better then. So next morning, get up in there, and I got up on top of the ridge and just kind of walking it, and there's all these like bowls kind of off the ridge.
Okay.
So the kind of strategy I was doing at the time is I'd get to the top of a bowl, do a bit of calling, and see if there's a response. So like, second or third bowl down, I get a pretty good response from the tom down there. And okay, so they're kind of at the bottom of the valley under the ridge. So I start working my way quietly down there. And I get to the point where there's this big old boulder, and they're right on the other side of it. So, this thing's like, I don't know, maybe 20-ish or so feet across, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so I kind of, get on a corner of this boulder, and I can hear them kind of, clucking and, browsing around in the
Okay.
in the grass on the other side, and they're kind of working their way around. So I'm thinking, I'm just going to sit here quietly, and they're going to walk out in front of me. The tom's there, and I'll get a shot on him, right? So I'm doing this, and I'm, peeping around the boulder, and hen turkey head pops out, just the head, and turns, looks right at me, and I don't know if it's the same hen or not.
Yeah.
Could have been. I don't know. But yeah, smart bird. So she sees me and takes off running, and the tom follows her. And I take a shot at him. And what I didn't think through at the time is when you have a full choke in your shotgun, you don't lead it like you do a duck. So I just, created this explosion of, duff and grass right in front of him. And he spun the other way and never saw him the rest of the day.
There you go.
They're quiet too.
They're a fun thing to hunt, man. I've had a little bit of success. I got 2 Rios and 1 Miriam, but man, they're tough and they're tricky and they're stupid and they make you feel even more stupid because you can't get close enough to shoot one. You're like, where are you?
Yeah.
They're like, I'm right here, and you're like, I still can't do it. Like they're crazy birds, man. But I've shot one with my bow, I've shot one with my shotgun, and I've shot one with a 270. So I've run the gamut.
270.
Yeah, that was in Texas. It was legal there.
Okay.
It's a short story. I'll tell it to you. So I'm hunting. I met a guy who helped me hunt some whitetail deer on public land in Texas. And he has a very small plot of land, maybe 10, 15 acres in Texas. But it's like, I don't know, like a mile long and like 150 yards wide. So really not very wide. And I'm there to hunt axis deer. Like that's what I show up for. But as I'm prepping, he's like, hey, it's turkey season. If you want to shoot one, go ahead. We got plenty. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I'm not going to shoot a turkey unless I'm done axis deer hunting because I want to shoot an axis deer. But I bring my bow because I want to be a bow hunter. I'm trying really hard. But I bring my rifle because I'm an opportunist, right? If something shows up and I've got this 100 yards of like left, right, but it's like 400 yards down the way, I need to just be able to take the shot and harvest the deer. 'Cause that's what I want is some meat. I don't care if it's a doe or a buck.
Right.
So I'm sitting there in my blind. I sit there for hours. It's boring. The morning starts off. There's turkeys calling everywhere. whitetail deer are walking through, but it's not whitetail season. And I'm hearing birds, and eventually I'm like, okay, well, this is dumb. Nothing's responding to my slate calls. I'm not seeing any axis deer. Let's walk the property. It's right on this river. I'll go and see if I can spot something maybe in the river because I can hunt there technically too. So I just start walking around, and so I've got like, it's so dumb now that I think about it, but I've got like my rifle in one hand, my bow in another hand, and a slate call in a pocket. So I'm like trying to hold both my weapons, just like. It's like a cartoon when they go camping and they have like all of their gear, like way too much gear. But I'm just walking around. So I walk around and I spook one bird. I call and I see his head pop out of the grass, but he didn't see me. So I in the process of putting my stuff down and getting my slate call back out and all that, I spook him. He runs off. I'm like, oh, and of course he had 15 feet and he's off the property. Damn. Okay. What are you going to do? So I keep going, spook another bird. And eventually I make a big loop and I come back and I'm like, okay, I've got to go. And this is actually like a week before I had the idea for this podcast because I was going to Dan Staton's elk shape camp in Texas. But I get back to the blind and I set my gun down, I set my bow down, and I'm like, well, I guess I should tear down. I got to go to that camp. And I'm like, I'll give it one more call. And we're talking like 2 p.m. in the afternoon. So
Right.
and it just goes off, and I'm like, oh shit. So I'm standing next to the blind, so I throw everything in the blind, and I get in the blind, and I get in there, and I get ready, and I make another call, and he's coming in hot, like he's fired up. So I get my bow on my lap, I make another call. Every time I call it, just ripping a gobble. And so I see him, and he pops up, and I range him, and he's like 30 yards, 35 yards, which I feel good about with my bow, but I pull back. And as I'm looking through in my blind, there's like, now that I think about it, I should have shot like grass, like nothing that would have stopped my bow. But at the time, I hadn't killed hardly anything with my bow. I think I had killed one other turkey. And I was like, no, at that distance with, 5 pieces of grass in my way, there's no way my arrow will get through. I don't want to injure this bird. So I was like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I can use my rifle. So I let down my bow and I set it down next to me and I grab my rifle. And the turkey's gone. And I'm like, oh, shit, where did he go? So I grab my slate call. His head pops up. And now he's about like 60 yards out. And I'm like, all right, man, let's go. And because I was expecting an axis deer to walk down this field 300 yards away from me, I'm at times 10 on my scope. And I can't find the bird. So I'm trying to find him. I'm like, oh, hold on. I dial it down to 3. There he is. And I'm like, I hope there's something left. Is like literally what I think as I pull the trigger. And we're talking, I'm just holding it up. I'm not resting on anything. I'm just holding the gun to my shoulder, 60, 70 yards on a turkey, and boom, dropped him just. And it actually ended up being a pretty decent shot. So I shot him high, which means his breast meat was totally fine. One of his wings the back wing was basically blown off. But the meat itself, like the breast and the thighs, were more or less in perfect condition. So you wouldn't have known. And I think that's actually his feathers right there behind me. So yeah, not many people have shot a bird with an elk rifle, but
yeah,
I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'm a hunter of opportunity. I'm not good enough to not use everything that I possibly can to get it done.
Yeah, no, not a lot of people can say that.
Yeah, it was absolutely ridiculous. And I told a couple people, like, what are you, a 270? Everybody just assumes the bird blew up. But it's backside wing. Otherwise, it was fine. Good eating. Made a KFC bowl out of it from I don't know if you'll feel the plate. He's been on my podcast before, but he gave me a KFC bowl recipe and delicious.
All right.
And didn't have to pick any shot out, which is a real benefit of the 270 if somebody else wants to try it.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, I stole the stage there. Go ahead, Matt. What else you got for us?
Oh, no worries. Yeah, so more recently, hunting wise, I've gotten married, and
congratulations.
My wife, thank you. My wife loves hunting. So
is that
kinda,
from before you, or did you introduce her to it?
I'd kind of say both. So, before me, she hadn't been hunting herself before.
Gotcha.
But her grandfather was really, really into hunting. Um, and so, she had kind of, grown up around, the, culture of, we can go get meat for the freezer, and,
Yeah.
that's a normal thing, you know. Um, anyway, so yeah, and for us, hunting's, it's a really big, food thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've got a couple of Euro mounts on the wall and
Yeah.
love a nice set of antlers as much as anyone else, but you know, I also like doe tags and cow tags. They eat
Absolutely.
great, you know. So, just me talking about it and us dating, she goes, I want to get involved with this. I think it's really cool that you do this and you're, thoughtful about what you eat and where you get it. And, I'm like, all right, right on. Last year I packed out an elk alone. I would love the help.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Like, don't want to do that
uh,
again.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, she went and got her hunter safety. And we both got cow tags that year. She didn't actually end up filling a tag that year. We uh, we had a truck kind of spook the herd we were trying to set up on, so it's
Okay.
kind of one of those last second. It was a, I guess, less than ideal setup for a new hunter, and I asked her, like, how do you feel about this, and she goes, hey, not this time, go
Yeah.
for it. So we got a cow, and we just gutted it and we're dragging it out, and she looks at me and goes, this is awesome, I want you to know I'm really into this. I was like, okay, all right. So so the year after, which is this last season, my goal is like, okay, you're gonna get something. And, we're gonna get you a deer tag, we're gonna get you a cow elk tag, and you're gonna fill one of the two of those. Um, so we were really kind of working on the deer tag. We had a good area, and unfortunately, this year the rifle seasons were plagued by this just beautiful, beautiful, warm weather, um, which don't keep the deer moving very well.
Yeah.
So, my buck tag, it was a second rifle tag, and I saw 12 does, not a single buck the whole season. Um, so then her tag was third rifle. So it got a little bit colder. So we get out there and we were hunting her tag out on the western slope.
Okay.
Mine was out on the kind of east side of things, kind of close to home. But we were hunting hers out on the western slope, in there I've gotten a deer before, so it was an area I knew pretty well. I was pretty confident we could get something put together. So we get out there and we proceed to spend 3 days like just behind the deer. Like haven't seen a deer on public land this whole time. We had one like really cold day. It was snowing.
Yeah.
Um, I was expecting all sorts of just great activity, and there was. It just didn't happen in front of us. Um, Actually, walking back, we found this pile of fresh deer scat that was like, it looked super fresh. So I just kind of hovered a hand over it, and I could feel some warmth off it. So I'm sitting there going, okay, so they've wandered, and there's like fresh deer tracks all through the snow.
Yeah.
But yeah, for whatever reason, yeah, didn't see them all day. They're just, doing laps around us, I guess. But yeah, so it's the last day of the season, and we're just kind of driving back out. I'm trying to think, oh, okay, where else could we check? And we get going by this hill, and there's a doe there. And so I stop the truck and I go, okay, Jen, you think we might be doing one of those hop out, get 30 feet from the center of the road and see
Yeah.
what happens, sorts of deals. And
Yeah.
and just find that doe, a little 4 point buck, pops his head up and looks over at us, and I go, okay, yeah, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so she she hops, you know, turn the truck off, we hop out, the deer doing what deer do, just kind of standing there staring at us. They're like, I don't know, 50 yards at the most away from us.
Okay.
Uh,
Is
so
this
I
while
mean,
you're in the
it's
middle of the road or once you've walked your 30 feet off?
well, yeah, we've walked off and gotten
Okay.
into the
Okay.
bushes. Yeah. So they're just standing there staring at us. And so she, takes a knee. It just, you know, super excited. Misses the first shot, and which that happens,
It does. It does. Especially when you're that close, right? Sometimes you aim a little high, shoots a little high. Just it happens.
Yep, yep. But yeah, so she took a, a breath, took the second shot.
Did they move when she
Beautiful,
shot the
beautiful.
first shot, or did they just stay put?
No, yeah, no, he just stood there staring.
Gosh, I'd rather be lucky than good any day, but I'm neither, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, and no, he's a super merciful deer,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, no, the second shot hit beautifully. He went right down, and yeah, that was just an awesome experience seeing my wife get her first deer, and
Yeah.
just kind of
How'd
the
she
joy.
react? Some people
Uh,
are overwhelmed and tears and all that, but like how did she do?
she was really stoked. I mean, at that point, that was kind of like our last huntable day of the season. So, at that point, we had just days and days and days of getting skunked.
Yeah.
So there's just kind of that relief of we've got fresh meat.
Yeah. You did all that work for something. That's
Yeah,
awesome, man.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah,
And it's cool that she's so hooked on it too.
yeah. No, it's awesome. No, we love getting out in the woods together and looking for critters and yeah. So hunting's just a fantastic way for us to go explore
Yeah.
together and make memories.
That's cool, man. I actually heard a great idea today. I told you I interviewed Mark Kenyon as well today, and he told
Hmm.
a great story about he went fake turkey hunting with his kids, where he went out with his kids and they got on turkeys, and his son had an umbrella. Why did he have an umbrella? He's still not sure why, but his son, with his imagination, the kid's 3, turns that umbrella into a shotgun in his imagination, and then he goes through the whole
Yeah.
story. I recommend everyone to listen to that episode once it's published here. It'll probably be published before this one, so it'll be out. But yeah, man, it was just cool to get out, hear about him getting out into the woods with his kids and having like no real stakes in it, just like having fun, getting close to the animals. And so it's cool to have that experience, especially with your wife, where you actually do have the stakes, but also just being out there, man. It's something I wish I had.
Hmm.
My wife has no interest in hunting. I'm working on it. And I plan on taking her on a fake turkey hunt with our kids, and hopefully getting her as
All
excited
right.
as the kids get. Because I know, like, my son right now, really into basketball. The Denver Nuggets, Nikola Jokic, she's just all over it. My wife wants nothing to do with sports, but she wanted to take him to a game, and now she's really into the Nuggets. So I'm like, okay, hold on, I can use this strategy. I'm gonna get
Oh
my
yeah,
kids
yeah.
fired up about this and have wife see it, and I think I'm onto something. But so I'm jealous of you, but it's cool that you were out there with the family, man, and just doing it, because I think that's what everybody wants.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
it's definitely great making good memories with people you love.
for sure, for sure.
I mean, it doesn't have to be hunting, but I like that it's hunting for us.
Right? Yeah, and then she shoots a deer, and you get to eat it. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. Cool, man. What else you got? You got any more stories, or was that what you had for us today?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the high runners. So,
Okay. Perfect, man.
yeah.
Well, what we'll do is we'll get together for another beer sometime. I think I owe you that at least.
Sounds good.
But yeah, man. But beyond that, we'll have you back on sometime in the future, and I'm sure you'll have plenty more stories for us. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. Matt, normally at this point, people share any kind of socials if they want people to follow them. Is that something you care about, or are you just going to walk off into the sunset?
I think I gotta take the latter.
No
I don't have
problem.
any social media.
There you
I got
go.
an
Good for
email,
you.
phone,
Good for
not
you, man.
posting that.
How did you find my link then? How did you get to that thing?
Your LinkedIn?
No, my link that I put on my Instagram to say, hey, I want to come on the podcast and tell stories. Where did you find that thing?
Oh, you got a link on Spotify.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. Look at me doing things that I'm better than I thought. Okay, cool, man. Well, thanks again, Matt. I appreciate it, man. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, we'll definitely grab that beer and we'll definitely have you back in the future.
All right.
All right. Thanks,
You
man.
have a good one.
All right, guys. That's it. A few more stories in the books. Again, I want to thank Matt for coming on the podcast, having a beer with me. Hopefully, I get to hang out with him again soon. To listeners, do like Matt, man. Reach out to me. We have a link in the show notes as well as on the Instagram page, a little form, just basically for me to reach out to you so that you can come on and tell us all some of your favorite hunting stories. Beyond that, please give us a review, a like, and share the podcast with one other person. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. Matt, thank you again for being brave, coming on here and sharing your stories. And that's it, guys. Get out there and make some stories of your own. Thank you.